Welcome, viewers. Today we uncover the dark heart of the Middle East, exposing a brutal war. In 2011, the world thought Syria would see a quick, peaceful shift to democracy. We thought the dictator would fall fast, just like in Egypt and Libya, ending oppression now. However, that hopeful dream was violently crushed when global powers stepped in to claim their land. This nation swiftly became a massive proxy war, igniting a ruthless and endless bloodbath. The Arab Spring swept across the region like wildfire, sparking fierce protests in every city. Civilians marched against the ruling regime, chanting for freedom under the scorching desert sun. Global watchers watched in awe, believing the old world order was crumbling before their very eyes. They hoped a Western-aligned government would soon emerge, bringing new prosperity to the state. But the state security forces showed no mercy, replying to peaceful chants with live gunfire. Soon, the bloody streets transformed into war zones, as rebels took up arms against a ruthless state. Cities that once thrived with life now lay in ruins, smothered by the thick smoke of urban combat. In Damascus, the ruling elite sat in dark rooms, watching their nation fracture on screen. They refused to step down, clinging to absolute power while the country burned down to ashes. Global leaders condemned the violence, but mere words could not stop the brutal, ongoing slaughter. Defectors from the National Army formed new factions, vowing to topple the oppressive regime. The world predicted a swift end, a swift victory for the awakened Arab democracy. Yet they underestimated the complexity of the Middle Eastern political landscape. Syria was never just another domino waiting to fall in a regional uprising. It stood at the deadly crossroads of empires, holding geopolitical secrets of vast worth. As the rebellion grew, the state's grip began to slip, leaving a power vacuum in its wake. For a brief moment, it seemed the people might win, that a new dawn was about to break free. They raised their flags over captured towns, singing songs of liberty amidst the dust and debris. But behind closed doors, in distant foreign capitals, dark and cold calculations were being made. To understand the tragedy, we must look beyond the borders, to the giants waiting in the dark. History shows that a weak nation, rich in strategy, will always attract the hungry wolves. The Western allies saw a chance to break old bonds, pushing for a regime change at any cost. Meanwhile, Eastern powers watched with growing alarm, fearing the loss of their crucial foothold here. The unseen chessboard was set, and the human lives in Syria were nothing but disposable pawns. The illusion of a brief revolt shattered completely, giving way to a deadly global game. Iran saw Syria as a vital land bridge, essential for sending arms to Hezbollah forces. Losing this ally meant losing their strict grip on the entire Levant region's security. Revolutionary Guards arrived in secret, bringing hardened tactics to a failing state army. They understood that if Damascus fell today, Tehran would face a deadly threat tomorrow. Russia held a naval base at Tartus, the crown jewel of their Mediterranean fleet. The Russian leader could not allow a Western-backed regime to seize this strategic port. Mercenaries from Moscow deployed swiftly, wearing uniforms with no official insignia. They provided the regime with deadly firepower, turning the tide against the rebel factions. Suddenly, the protesters were no longer fighting just a local dictator with a weak army. They were facing highly trained foreign operatives, backed by endless streams of heavy munitions. The tactical map of the Middle East reddened as new armies carved up the fractured nation. In underground command posts, foreign generals moved their pieces across the blood-stained wooden board. They viewed the burning cities as mere grid squares, a cold and ruthless calculus of empire. Every bomb dropped was a message to a rival, written in the blood of innocent civilians. The United Nations tried to intervene, but vetoes in the Security Council blocked them. The world watched helplessly as diplomacy failed, leaving military might as the only judge. Foreign interests now dictated the battle lines, ignoring the cries of the starving populace. Military analysts call this a proxy war, where big powers bleed each other through third parties. It is a cowardly yet effective strategy, avoiding direct nuclear confrontation. If you were a weak nation caught in this crossfire, would you surrender or fight a hopeless war? As the conflict dragged on, new players entered the fray, seeking to protect their own border states. The situation grew incredibly complex, with a web of alliances shifting daily. Weapons flowed freely across porous frontiers, arming a multitude of extremist factions. Moderate voices were drowned out by radicals who seized the chaos to build a dark empire. The original goal of a free society was buried under mountains of shattered concrete. It was no longer about democracy at all. It was a pure, unfiltered fight for survival. Foreign states provided intel and air support, guiding missiles against their rivals' mercenaries. The sky above Syria became a crowded zone, a deadly theater of advanced aviation. Jets from different nations crossed paths in the dark, testing each other's patience and radar locks. One false move or misread signal in the air could trigger a full-scale world war in an instant. The United States stepped in to back Kurdish forces, viewing them as reliable ground troops. Western special forces operated in the dark, directing precision strikes on key enemy hubs. They armed the militias with advanced technology, aiming to defeat the radical terrorists. But this Western alliance angered a key neighbor, as Turkey watched the Kurdish rise with deep dread. Ankara feared a strong Kurdish state on its border would inspire rebellions within its own lands. So Turkey launched massive cross-border offensives, deploying tanks to crush the US allies. We witnessed the bizarre and deadly spectacle of NATO members backing opposing factions. The sacred alliances of the Cold War era broke down completely in this desert bloodbath. Meanwhile, Israel struck from the southern shadows, launching stealth attacks on Iranian posts. They refused to let advanced missiles reach Hezbollah, bombing secret arms depots in the dead of night. Damascus nights were often torn apart by blast, as Israeli jets evaded radar nets. High above, Russian bombers showed little restraint, unleashing devastating carpet-bombing runs. They flattened entire neighborhoods around Aleppo, burying defenders under collapsed roofs. The tactical approach was brutal and cold-blooded. Destroy the city to save it from the rebels. Hospitals and schools became frequent targets of war, shattering any remaining human rights laws. Historic markets that stood for 1,000 years were reduced to smoldering piles of grey rubble. Throughout this agony, the state army advanced, protected by a thick shield of foreign armor. The dictator sat secure in his underground room, watching his nation bleed dry to keep his throne. It was a masterclass in geopolitical stealth, where everyone denied their direct involvement. When multiple empires fight upon your homeland, can true independence ever be achieved again? The lines of control on the map grew extremely thick, isolating towns into starving pockets. Humanitarian aid was used as a weapon, denied to areas under rebel control. Children grew up knowing nothing but the sound of drones, their childhoods stolen by a war of elites. The conflict bred a new generation of fighters, hardened by trauma and driven by bitter hate. Even as the armies of the caliphate collapsed, the underlying tensions never went away. Russia and the US patrolled the same highways, their armored convoys passing a few feet apart. The risk of a direct superpower collision remained extremely high every single day. Yet, a dark, unspoken agreement prevailed among them, avoiding a clash that all sides would lose. They agreed to let the Syrian people bear the cost, paying for global ambitions with their lives. By 2019, the map was firmly divided, a shattered mirror of a formerly proud state. The northern border remained in Turkish control, a buffer zone against the Kurdish aspirations. The eastern deserts were held by American proxies, guarding the dwindling oil fields from the regime. The west and the capital was secured by Moscow, ensuring their naval base would never be lost. Iran maintained its shadowy underground networks, cementing its influence across the Levant. The unified state of Syria no longer exists. It is a ghost country ruled by foreign guns. As the smoke gradually clears in the present day, we are left to analyze the grim aftermath. Over 500,000 human lives were tragically lost, a staggering toll for a game of influence. Millions more fled across the water as refugees, sparking a global migration crisis of scale. Cities like Aleppo and Homs are now just memories, reduced to oceans of grey and lifeless dust. For those left behind, there is no victory to celebrate, only the bitter taste of cold survival. The shattered remains of the nation stand as a grim testament to the high cost of global proxy wars. What started as a simple plea for democratic reform was quickly hijacked by ruthless foreign powers. The Syrian people lost their voice when heavy guns and external funds flooded their homeland. Dictators learned that survival is possible if you invite a larger predator to protect you. Meanwhile, the global superpowers tested their latest weapons on the bleeding urban battlefields. No treaties were signed, and no definitive peace was ever formally declared to heal these fractured lands. The conflict merely froze in place, locked by the stalemate of heavily armed military borders. Beneath the ashes, extreme factions are quietly rebuilding, waiting for the next spark to strike. The international community proved completely powerless to stop the ongoing slaughter. It exposed the absolute failure of modern diplomacy against raw global aggression. Generations of children have grown up knowing nothing but displacement, terror, and deep trauma. Their shattered schools and hospitals are silent monuments to humanity's darkest modern failures. While the world's attention has shifted to other crises, The bleeding wound here remains fully open. The mighty masterminds who funded this proxy war sit safely away, untouched by the horrors. But the brutal consequences of their dark actions will haunt the entire Middle East for decades to come. As Syria lies broken, a dangerous new military model is rising in neighboring Iraq. This rising dark shadow threatens to swallow the government whole, setting the stage for our next chapter. Syria serves as a tragic warning of what happens when a weak state becomes a chessboard for giants. Was this intervention a cruel empire game or a necessary evil? Share your thoughts below. If you found this deep dive useful, please hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel.